The treaty hall on Sanctuary Station was silent except for the hum of life support systems. Commander Thane Corval of the Drakesh Imperial Fleet stood at attention before the Galactic Peace Council, his scaled jaw set in a hard line. Behind him, 5 years of brutal warfare hung in the air like smoke, battles that had cost millions of lives on both sides, human and Drakesh alike. The terms are non-negotiable, Ambassador Chen said from the human delegation. Her face was tired, lined with the stress of endless negotiations. If your empire wants peace, we need more than signatures on paper. We need symbolic unity, something both our peoples can witness and believe in. A marriage, Thane said flatly. You want me to marry a human. Not just any human, a volunteer chosen by our council, someone willing to bridge our species through this union. Chen pulled up a holographic display. You're the Drakesh Empire's greatest warrior. A hero to your people. If you can accept a human spouse, live peacefully on Earth, and demonstrate that coexistence is possible, it might be enough to prevent the war from reigniting. Thane studied the faces of the council. They were desperate. Both sides were. The alternative to this insane proposal was another decade of bloodshed that neither civilization could afford. How long? He asked. 1 Earth year. You'll live among humans, participate in cultural exchange, allow media coverage of your integration. After that, if both parties agree, the marriage can be dissolved and you'll return home with honor. And if I refuse, the war begins again in 30 days. Our intelligence suggests your empire's leadership is fractured. Warmonger factions are already positioning for power. Without this gesture, they'll have all the justification they need to restart hostilities. Chen leaned forward. You'd be saving both our peoples, Commander. Thane closed his eyes. He thought of his crew, his soldiers, the Drakesh civilians who'd suffered through 5 years of conflict. Then he thought of the humans he'd fought, brave, resourceful, and just as desperate to protect their own. I accept. 3 weeks later, Thane stood in a small courthouse in Portland, Oregon, feeling distinctly out of place. His 7-foot frame was barely contained in the formal Drakesh diplomatic uniform, and his silver-scaled skin reflected the fluorescent lights harshly. His forearms, 2 primary, 2 secondary, were carefully positioned to seem less threatening, though he knew humans found his physiology unsettling. Across from him stood Dr. Mara Chen, no relation to the ambassador, apparently. She was a xenobiologist, chosen for her understanding of Drakesh culture and her willingness to participate in this bizarre experiment. She was small by human standards, dark-haired, and studying him with the clinical interest of someone who'd spent years examining alien specimens. Do you, Thane Corval, take this human to be your lawfully wedded spouse? The translator embedded in his throat converted his response. I do. And do you, Mara Chen, take this Drakesh to be your lawfully wedded spouse? I do. Then, by the power vested in me by the state of Oregon and the Galactic Peace Accords, I now pronounce you married. You may. The officiant glanced between them uncertainly. Exchange whatever gesture is appropriate. Thane knew Drakesh custom, a formal bow, a ceremonial exchange of house tokens, but he'd been briefed on human traditions. Hesitantly, he extended one primary hand. Mara took it. Her hand was impossibly small in his scaled palm, warm and fragile. For a moment, they just stood there, 2 beings from different worlds connected by nothing more than political necessity. The cameras flashed. The news feeds went live. And across the galaxy, billions watched a Drakesh warrior and a human scientist begin an experiment that neither of them fully understood. The problem started immediately. Thane had been assigned a residential apartment in Portland, carefully selected, heavily monitored, and equipped with both human and Drakesh amenities. He'd expected to maintain separate quarters from his spouse, but cultural advisors had insisted that humans expected married couples to cohabitate. "This is your room," Mara said on the first night, gesturing to a bedroom that had been modified for Drakesh physiology. "I'm across the hall. The living spaces are shared. Try not to break anything. This furniture isn't rated for your strength." Thane nodded, still processing the strangeness of it all. "Understood, I will endeavor to minimize property damage." She almost smiled. "That's probably the most alien thing you've said so far. My translators are calibrated for formal diplomatic language. Should I adjust them?" "No, it's fine, kind of charming, actually." She moved toward her own room, then paused. "Look, I know this is weird for both of us, but we've got a year to make this work. Let's just try not to hate each other." An acceptable goal. This time she did smile, and Thane felt something shift in his chest. A biological response he couldn't quite identify. He filed it away for later analysis. The incident that changed everything happened on day 4. Thane had been briefed on human customs, human law, human social norms. What he hadn't been briefed on was human traffic patterns. When Mara stepped off the sidewalk without looking, and a vehicle came screaming around the corner, every combat instinct in Thane's body activated simultaneously. He moved faster than human eyes could track, all 4 arms extending to grab Mara and pull her back. The car missed her by inches. Thane's secondary arms had caught her mid-pull, cradling her against his chest in a position that was both protective, and he realized a moment too late, extremely intimate by human standards. They stood frozen for 3 full seconds. Mara's face was inches from his chest plates. His arms were wrapped completely around her smaller frame, and approximately 47 cameras from news agencies, security systems, and civilian phones captured every angle. "I apologize," Thane said, carefully setting her down. "Protective instincts. I did not mean to overstep boundaries." Mara looked up at him, still catching her breath. "You just saved my life." "Yes, was that inappropriate?" She laughed, a slightly hysterical sound. "No, Thane. Saving someone's life is never inappropriate. Thank you." By nightfall, the footage had 17 million views. By morning, it was trending across 36 human social media platforms and had been picked up by galactic news networks. The image of a massive Drakesh warrior cradling a small human woman with all 4 arms had become the most shared piece of content in recent history. The headlines varied by source. "Alien husband risks self to save human wife." "Drakesh warrior shows tender side in traffic incident." "Is this the face of peace?" Viral video sparks debate. Thane tried to ignore the attention and focus on his mission. He attended cultural exchanges, participated in interviews, allowed himself to be paraded at diplomatic functions as living proof that peace was possible. But the universe had other plans. The second incident happened at a grocery store. Thane had accompanied Mara on what she called a supply run, though he privately thought it resembled a military logistics operation. As they navigated the aisles, a human male approached Mara with what Thane's cultural database identified as romantic interest. The conversation seemed friendly. The human male smiled, gestured, clearly attempting to engage Mara in extended dialogue. Mara smiled politely but appeared uncomfortable. Thane's protective instincts activated again. He stepped forward, placing himself partially between Mara and the other human, two of his arms unconsciously positioned to shield her. His crest, a display feature that usually remained flat, rose slightly in what Drakesh recognized as a territorial warning. "My spouse is not interested," Thane said, his translator converting the words with perhaps more edge than intended. "Please respect her space." The human male's eyes went wide. He stammered an apology and retreated rapidly. Mara stared up at Thane. "Did you just mark your territory?" "I may have responded to what I perceived as unwanted attention toward he paused. "Toward you. Thane, we're not actually married. I mean, legally we are, but this isn't real. You don't need to. The contract states I am to act as your spouse for 1 year. That includes protective responsibilities." She studied his face, and something in her expression shifted. "Right, the contract, of course." The footage from the grocery store's security cameras was online within hours. This time, the commentary was more divided. "Alien husband defends human wife from harassment. Drakesh warrior shows possessive behavior, red flag. Adorable or aggressive, you decide." By the end of the first month, Thane had unintentionally created a media phenomenon. Every protective gesture, every moment of consideration, every accidentally romantic action was documented, analyzed, and shared across the galaxy. When he learned that humans enjoyed receiving flowers and presented Mara with a bouquet of earth roses, carefully researched to ensure they weren't toxic to humans, the footage went viral. When he cooked a traditional Drakesh meal adapted for human biology, food bloggers across 3 systems analyzed his technique. When he stood in the rain holding an umbrella over Mara while getting completely soaked himself, relationship advice columns debated whether this was peak husband material or concerning devotion. But not everyone found it charming. On Drakesh Prime, the warrior caste was furious. Commander Thane Corval, hero of the Battle of Terminus Gate, conqueror of the Meridian Cluster, was being portrayed across the galaxy as a domestic servant, a protector of a single fragile human instead of a warrior leader. "He humiliates our entire species," General Vexnar snarled during a military council meeting. "Performing human courtship rituals, acting as a glorified bodyguard, this peace marriage makes us look weak." "It makes us look peaceful," Admiral Sorelin countered. "Exactly as intended. Peace built on weakness is no peace at all. The warmonger factions are gaining support because of this spectacle. They're saying we've lost our warrior spirit. Then perhaps," Sorelin said quietly, "we need to find a new definition of strength." But Vexnar wasn't listening. He was already contacting his allies, already planning. If the Empire's leadership wouldn't end this farce, he would. On Earth, the reaction was equally complex. Governments worried that Thane's presence was reconnaissance for invasion. His protective instincts were analyzed for signs of controlling behavior. Every gesture was examined for hidden meaning, secret messages, coded communications with the Drakesh fleet. But the public was obsessed. Fan communities formed around Thara, the couple name that emerged on social media. Fan art, fan fiction, and endless speculation about their relationship flooded the internet. Some humans found the cross-species romance inspiring. Others found it disturbing. Still others treated it like reality television, eagerly awaiting each new incident. Mara tried to ignore it all. She conducted her research, maintained her professional distance, reminded herself daily that this was a political arrangement with an expiration date. But it was getting harder, because Thane wasn't acting like this was political. He remembered how she took her coffee. He learned to cook human food specifically to her taste preferences. He stood between her and any perceived threat with the absolute certainty of someone who'd die before letting harm reach her. Why? She asked him one night after another viral incident. Why do you care this much? The contract just says you have to live here and not start any wars. You don't have to be this invested. Thane was quiet for a long moment. Among my people there is a concept, Keshvara. It translates poorly, but it means something like chosen duty that becomes chosen devotion. When I accepted this arrangement, it was duty, but somewhere in these weeks it became. He paused. I do not have the words in your language. Try in yours. He spoke a phrase in Drakish, all clicks and harmonics that her translator couldn't parse. Then he tried again in English. You became mine to protect, not because I must, but because I choose to, because the thought of you being harmed is unacceptable to me on a level that transcends political necessity. Mara's heart was pounding. Thane, I know this is not real to you. I know when the year ends, you will return to your life and I to mine. But while I am here, while you are my spouse even in name only, I will fulfill that role with everything I am. It is the Drakesh way. It is my way. Before Mara could respond, Thane's communication implant chimed. He tensed, reading the message his neural interface was receiving. What is it? Warning from Drakesh Command. Warmonger factions are mobilizing. They're calling the peace marriage a disgrace. There. He stopped, his scaled face going rigid. They're planning to execute me as a traitor. They believe eliminating me will void the peace treaty and justify restarting the war. They can't. They can, and they will unless. Thane pulled up the marriage contract, the actual legal document that had bound them together. His eyes scanned the Drakesh text, searching for something. Then he found it. What is it? Clause 47, subsection 12. Written in ancient Drakesh legal language that most wouldn't recognize. His voice was hollow. This contract, it's not just a political arrangement. Under traditional Drakesh law, this is a Keshavara bond, a true marriage by our oldest customs, which means what? It means if you accept it, if you choose to honor the bond fully instead of treating it as political theater, I become bound to Earth's legal protections. I cannot be recalled or executed without Earth's government agreeing to extradite me. The marriage becomes a permanent diplomatic shield. He looked at her. But it also means the marriage cannot be dissolved, not after 1 year, not ever. Under Drakesh law, a Keshavara bond is eternal. Myra felt the room spin. The council, did they know? Did they set this up? Ambassador Chen is Drakesh by marriage. She would have known the legal terminology. This was never about 1 year. This was about creating a permanent connection between our species, one that couldn't be broken even if the warmongers seized power. Outside, news feeds were already reporting Drakesh fleet movements. Warmonger factions were mobilizing. Earth's defense systems were powering up in response. The fragile peace was cracking, and at the center of it all was a marriage contract that was either the last hope for peace or the trigger for total war. So what do we do? Mara asked. Thane stood, all four arms flexing with tension. We have two options. You can refuse to honor the bond. I return to face execution, the treaty fails, and war begins. Or, or you accept the bond as real. I claim Earth's protection as your spouse. The warmongers lose their justification because I'm no longer a Drakesh military asset. I'm a civilian married to a human under both species' laws. But Mara, you need to understand what that means. No annulment. No divorce under Drakesh law. Whatever this is between us would become permanent. They stared at each other across the small apartment that had become their shared space. Outside, the galaxy was preparing for war. Inside, two beings from different worlds had to decide if the connection they'd built, accidentally, chaotically, impossibly, was worth making real. If I say yes, Myra said slowly, I'm not just stopping a war, I'm choosing you, for real, forever. Yes. And if I say no, then I die knowing I fulfilled my duty, and you return to your life free of me. Mara thought about the last month, the protective gestures, the terrible cooking attempts. The way Thane had learned to exist in a world not built for him, all while somehow making her feel safer than she'd ever felt before. The way he'd looked at her when he thought she wasn't watching, like she was something precious worth protecting. She thought about the footage that had gone viral. Not because it was staged or performed, but because it had captured something genuine that people recognized. Two beings learning to care for each other across impossible differences. The contract, she said. Show me the clause in both languages. Thane pulled it up, displaying the ancient Drakesh script alongside the English translation. She read it carefully, noting the subtle differences. How what appeared as political marriage in English was actually eternal soul bond in the original Drakesh. They tricked us, she said. Yes, used us as pawns in a bigger game. Yes, probably knowing we'd have no choice but to accept when the truth came out. Most likely. Mara looked up at him, this 7-foot warrior with 4 arms and silver scales and eyes that had somehow learned to look at her with devotion that transcended species. You know what? I'm okay with that. What? She crossed the room, stood in front of him, and held out her hand, the same gesture from their wedding day. I accept the bond. For real, not because I have to, but because somewhere in this chaos I started wanting to. You saved my life. You learned to cook human food. You stood in the rain holding an umbrella over me while getting soaked. You're impossible and alien and completely insane, and she took a breath. I choose you too, Thane Corval, Keshvara, or whatever it's called, I'm in. Thane's crest rose fully, a display of overwhelming emotion. All 4 arms came around her, pulling her close with a gentleness that contradicted his warrior's strength. You understand what you're accepting. No escape clause, no end date, just us, she agreed. Against the galaxy's expectations, let's give them something to really talk about. Thane's laugh rumbled through his chest. You are the bravest creature I've ever encountered, says the warrior who agreed to marry an alien to prevent a war. No, he said softly. Says the warrior who fell in love with his wife and is grateful she fell back. The notification chimed on every news feed simultaneously. Breaking. Human spouse formally accepts Drakesh eternal bond. Marriage contract activated under ancient law. The warmonger factions on Drakesh Prime scrambled to respond, but it was too late. Thane was no longer a military asset. He was a civilian protected by Earth law, permanently removed from their chain of command. They had no legal grounds to recall or execute him. The peace treaty held. The war didn't restart. And across the galaxy, a single marriage between a Drakesh warrior and a human scientist became the foundation for a new kind of peace, one built not on treaties or threats, but on the simple, chaotic, impossible truth that love could cross any distance, bridge any difference, and survive any political scheme. It was messy, it was viral, it was completely unplanned, and it worked.